How do you survive when your mafia husband decides your loyalty matters more than your life or his child's? Blythe Remington stood at the edge of the ballroom, one hand resting on the swell of her belly, the other clutching her phone like a lifeline. The Christmas party blazed around her crystal chandeliers, throwing golden light across designer gowns, laughter echoing off vaulted ceilings, the scent of pine and expensive perfume thick in the air. But none of it registered. Not anymore. Because 10 minutes ago, security had pulled her aside. 10 minutes ago, they'd opened her purse and found a diamond bracelet worth more than most people made in a year. 10 minutes ago, her life had detonated. And across the room, watching it all unfold with those cold, calculating eyes, was her husband. Fabio Orsini didn't look concerned. He didn't rush to her defense. He simply stood there, drink in hand, head tilted slightly as if observing an experiment. As if she were a variable in an equation he was solving. The security chief was speaking, his voice low and urgent. "Mrs. Orsini, we need you to come with us." Quietly. "Mr. Delacroix is willing to handle this privately if you cooperate." Privately. The word tasted like poison. In Fabio's world, private meant a basement, a chair, questions asked with fists and blades. Her baby kicked, a flutter against her ribs that felt like a plea. 5 months. She was 5 months pregnant with the child of a man who controlled half the criminal empire on the East Coast. A man who'd promised her safety, protection, a life away from the chaos she'd grown up in. A man who was now letting her drown. "I didn't take anything," she said, her voice steady despite the panic clawing up her throat. "Someone put that in my bag." The security chief's expression didn't change. "That's what they all say." Movement rippled through the crowd. Guests were noticing now, whispers spreading like wildfire. She caught snippets, Orsini's wife, and stealing, and can you believe it? Each word was a nail in her coffin. And still, Fabio didn't move. But someone else did. A woman emerged from the crowd, her red dress cutting through the sea of black tuxedos like a wound. Serafina Volkov, Fabio's business associate, his ally in the brutal power struggle that had consumed the past 6 months. She smiled as she approached, all sharp edges and false sympathy. "Blythe, darling. What a mess you've gotten yourself into." The security chief straightened. "Miss Volkov, this doesn't concern." "Oh, but it does." Serafina's eyes glittered. "You see, that bracelet belongs to me, and I'd very much like to know why Mrs. Orsini felt entitled to it." The room tilted. Blythe's hand tightened on her belly, protective, desperate. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. This was a setup. Her gaze snapped back to Fabio, and for just a second, one brutal, clarifying second, their eyes met across the ballroom. She saw it then. The truth she'd been too afraid to acknowledge. He knew. He'd known all along. The security chief reached for her arm. "Ma'am, we need to go. Now." But Blythe didn't move. Couldn't move. Because the man she'd married, the father of her child, the person who'd sworn to protect her above all else, had just made his choice. And it wasn't her. Serafina leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper only Blythe could hear. "Welcome to the game, sweetheart. Let's see if you're smart enough to survive it." The baby kicked again, harder this time, and Blythe realized with terrible clarity that survival wasn't optional anymore. It was the only thing that mattered. Because if Fabio was willing to sacrifice her for whatever sick plan he was orchestrating, she couldn't trust anyone in this room. Not even the man who'd put a ring on her finger and a baby in her belly. The security chief's grip tightened, the crowd closed in, and somewhere in the chaos, Blythe heard Fabio's voice, calm and detached, addressing the room. "Handle it appropriately." 3 words. That's all it took to seal her fate. "Hey beautiful souls, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. I love seeing where you all are. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next in this story." 3 hours earlier, Blythe had been in their penthouse, staring at her reflection in the floor-length mirror while her stylist fussed with the emerald gown Fabio had chosen. Green for Christmas. Green for the Orsini family colors. Green for the image they needed to project power, unity, untouchable control. She'd felt the baby move then too. a gentle roll that made her smile despite the knot of anxiety that never fully left her chest. "You look stunning, Mrs. Orsini," the stylist had said, stepping back to admire her work. But Blythe hadn't been looking at the dress. She'd been looking at her eyes, searching for the girl she used to be before she'd fallen for a man whose world operated on violence and secrets. Fabio had entered without knocking. He never knocked, not in his own home. His presence filled the room instantly, that particular energy he carried like a second skin, dangerous, magnetic, utterly in control. "Everyone out," he'd said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. The stylist and assistants had vanished like smoke. He'd approached slowly, his gaze traveling over her with an intensity that still made her breath catch. Even now, even after everything, 6 months of marriage hadn't dulled the effect he had on her. "Beautiful," he'd murmured, his hand settling on her hip, thumb brushing the curve of her belly. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous." The truth had slipped out before she could stop it. "These events always make me nervous." His jaw had tightened almost imperceptibly. "You're an Orsini now. You don't get to be nervous. You get to be untouchable." There it was. The reminder that she wasn't just his wife, she was a piece on his board. A symbol of his power. She'd met Fabio 8 months ago at a charity auction. She'd been working catering, trying to make rent on her cramped apartment while finishing her graduate degree in art history. He'd been everywhere, commanding every room he entered, his dark eyes missing nothing. When he'd approached her, she'd thought it was a mistake. Men like Fabio Orsini didn't notice women like her, women with student debt and secondhand dresses and dreams that didn't include danger. But he'd noticed, and he'd pursued her with the same ruthless focus he applied to everything else in his life. The courtship had been a whirlwind. Flowers that cost more than her monthly salary. Dinners at restaurants she couldn't pronounce. His hands on her skin, his promises whispered in the dark. "I'll protect you. I'll give you everything. You'll never have to worry again." She'd known what he was. He'd never hidden it. But she'd convinced herself that his world wouldn't touch her. That love would be enough to keep her safe. Then she'd gotten pregnant, and everything had shifted. Fabio had become more distant. More consumed by business she wasn't allowed to ask about. More likely to disappear for days and return with blood on his knuckles and ice in his eyes. And she'd started noticing things. Conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. Looks exchanged between Fabio and his associates. The way Serafina Volkov had started appearing more frequently, her presence a constant thorn. "There's something you need to understand about tonight," Fabio had said, still touching her belly, his voice soft but edged with steel. "Serafina is making a play for territory that belongs to the family. She's been undermining our operations for months. Tonight, I'm going to remind her why that was a mistake." Blythe's stomach had dropped. "What does that have to do with me?" His smile had been cold. "Everything, Kara. Everything is connected. You're carrying the next generation of the Orsini bloodline. That makes you leverage. That makes you a target. Then why are we going?" "Because showing weakness is worse than facing danger." He'd leaned in, his lips brushing her temple. "Trust me, I've handled worse." But standing there in that mirror, watching him touch her like she was property, Blythe had felt something crack inside her chest. A fissure in the foundation of everything she'd built her life on. She'd wanted to ask him if he loved her. If their baby mattered more than his empire. If he'd choose her if it came down to it. She hadn't asked, because she'd been afraid of the answer. Now, being hauled through the ballroom by security, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on her, she realized her fear had been justified. Fabio had already made his choice. And she was going to pay the price. Part 3. The inciting incident. The security office was located in the basement of the venue, a sterile white room that smelled like disinfectant and fear. They'd sat her in a metal chair, taken her purse, and told her to wait. No phone, no water, no explanation beyond the accusation hanging in the air like a noose. Blythe pressed her palms against her thighs, forcing herself to breathe. Panic wouldn't help. Panic would only make this worse. The door opened, and a man she didn't recognize stepped inside. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her childhood home. His expression was unreadable. "Mrs. Orsini, I'm Julian Delacroix. The bracelet in your possession belongs to my client, Serafina Volkov." "I didn't steal it," Blythe said immediately. Someone planted it in my bag. Delacroix pulled out a chair and sat across from her, folding his hands on the table like a priest preparing for confession. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've heard every excuse, every story, every desperate lie. So let me save us both some time. I don't care if you took it or not. The words hit like a slap. Then why am I here? Because Miss Volkov wants something from your husband, and you, unfortunately, are the currency he's chosen to trade. The room spun. Blythe gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. What are you talking about? Your husband is a brilliant strategist, ruthless, efficient. But he has a problem. Serafina Volkov has been systematically dismantling his supply chains for 6 months. She's positioned herself to take control of 3 major territories by New Year's. Fabio needs leverage to force her hand. And you think framing me gives him that? Delacroix's smile was thin, pitying. I don't think anything, Mrs. Orsini. I know. Because 2 hours ago, Fabio Orsini offered me double my retainer to ensure this accusation sticks long enough for him to complete whatever move he's planning tonight. The air left her lungs. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly, protective, disbelieving. You're lying. Am I? He slid a photograph across the table. It showed Fabio and Delacroix in what looked like a parking garage, shaking hands. The timestamp read 3 days ago. He paid me in advance. $500,000 to make sure you take the fall publicly. He said it would force Serafina to show her hand. Use you as bait to expose her network. Blythe stared at the photo, her mind fracturing. 3 days ago. That was the night Fabio had come home late, kissed her forehead, told her everything was going to be fine. He'd been planning this. Planning to sacrifice her. Why are you telling me this? Her voice came out hollow. Because I have a daughter your age. Delacroix leaned back, his expression softening just slightly. And because Fabio Orsini is playing a game where you and that baby are disposable pieces. I've seen how this ends. It doesn't end well for you. The door burst open before she could respond. Fabio stood in the doorway, his presence immediately commanding the space. His eyes locked on Delacroix with lethal focus. Get out. Delacroix stood slowly, smoothing his jacket. We were just finishing. Now. The lawyer left without another word, but not before glancing back at Blythe with something that looked almost like an apology. Then it was just the two of them. Fabio closed the door, the sound echoing like a gunshot. He didn't approach her, didn't touch her, just stood there, examining her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Are you okay? He asked finally. The question was so absurd, so disconnected from reality, that Blythe almost laughed. Did you do this? Do what? Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't stand there and lie to me. Did you plant that bracelet? Did you pay Delacroix to frame me? Something flickered in his eyes, surprise. Maybe, that she'd figured it out so quickly. Or respect. With Fabio, it was impossible to tell. It's complicated, he said. I'm pregnant with your child, and you used me as bait. How is that complicated? He moved then, closing the distance between them in 3 strides. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone in a gesture that had once made her feel safe. Now it felt like a threat. Everything I do is to protect this family, he said quietly, including you, including our baby. Serafina was planning to move against us tonight, against you specifically. I needed to control the narrative, make her think she had the upper hand so she'd get careless. By throwing me to the wolves? By keeping you exactly where I can see you, where my people can protect you. His jaw tightened. You think I'd ever let anything happen to you? To our child? Blythe searched his face, looking for the man she'd fallen in love with, but all she saw was calculation, strategy, the cold mathematics of survival. I don't know what you'd do anymore, she whispered. His expression hardened. Then let me be clear. You're going to go back upstairs. You're going to smile and play the dutiful wife while I finish what I started. And when this is over, you'll understand why it had to be this way. And if I refuse? The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Then Fabio leaned in, his lips brushing her ear. You won't, because you're smart enough to know that the only way you survive my world is by trusting me to navigate it. He pulled back, straightened his jacket, and opened the door. Let's go. We have a party to finish. But as Blythe stood on shaking legs, following her husband back into the chaos. One thought crystallized with perfect, terrifying clarity. She couldn't trust him. Not anymore. Not with her life, and definitely not with their babies. Which meant she was completely, utterly alone. Blythe returned to the ballroom on Fabio's arm like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just discovered her husband was willing to use her as a chess piece in his brutal game. The emerald gown suddenly felt like a costume, the weight of it suffocating. The guests stared. Of course they stared. Half of them had witnessed her being dragged away by security. Now she was back, playing the role of Mrs. Orsini, and they didn't know what to make of it. Fabio's hand rested on the small of her back, possessive and warm. To anyone watching, it looked protective, but Blythe felt it for what it was, a leash. "Smile," he murmured against her ear. "Serafina is watching." Blythe found the woman across the room, red dress blazing, a glass of wine in her hand and triumph written across her face. She raised her glass slightly, a mocking toast. The rage that surged through Blythe was sharp and clarifying. Serafina thought she'd won. Thought Blythe was just another pawn to be moved and discarded. Maybe she was right. A server passed with a tray of drinks. Fabio grabbed 2 glasses of whiskey, pressing one into her hand before remembering. His eyes flickered to her belly. "Water," he said curtly to the server, who scurried off. "Thoughtful," Blythe said, her voice dripping acid. His jaw tightened. "Don't." "Don't what? Don't be angry that you framed me for theft? Don't be terrified that the father of my baby cares more about his empire than his family? Lower your voice." His grip on her back tightened, fingers digging in just enough to hurt. She stepped away from his touch, turning to face him fully. Around them, conversations continued, but she could feel attention shifting their way, people pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. "If you wanted me to play along, you should have warned me," she hissed. "You should have trusted me enough to tell me the plan. Trust is earned. And you've been in this world for 8 months, Blythe. You're not ready for the kind of decisions I have to make." The condescension in his tone made her want to scream. Instead, she forced a smile, the kind she'd learned to wear at these events. Bright, empty, perfect. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you got me pregnant." She walked away before he could respond, weaving through the crowd with her head high. Her heart hammered against her ribs, adrenaline and fear mixing into something volatile. She needed air, space. A moment to think without Fabio's presence clouding everything. The terrace doors were open, cold December air spilling into the overheated ballroom. Blythe slipped outside, grateful for the bite of winter against her flushed skin. The city stretched below, lights glittering like scattered diamonds. Beautiful, indifferent. She pressed her hands against the railing, breathing deeply. Running away won't help. Blythe spun. A man stood in the shadows near the door, cigarette glowing orange in the darkness. He stepped into the light, and she recognized him. Matteo Cruz, one of Fabio's oldest associates. She'd met him twice, maybe 3 times. He'd always been polite, distant. "I'm not running," she said carefully. "Could have fooled me." He took a drag, exhaling smoke into the night. "You look like a woman who just realized she married a monster." The bluntness startled her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've known Fabio since we were kids, and I've watched him sacrifice every person he's ever claimed to care about for the sake of control." Matteo's eyes were dark, unreadable. "Your baby won't change that. If anything, it makes you more expendable." "Why do you work for him then?" "Who said I work for him?" He dropped the cigarette, crushing it under his heel. "I work with him. Big difference. And right now, I'm trying to decide if you're worth the risk." "What risk?" Before he could answer, the terrace doors flew open. Fabio stood there, fury radiating off him in waves. "Matteo, inside, now." Matteo held his gaze for a long moment, some silent challenge passing between them. Then he shrugged and walked past Fabio without a word. Fabio advanced on her, backing her against the railing. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing. He was just smoking." "Don't lie to me." His hands caged her in, palms flat on the railing on either side of her hips. "Matteo doesn't do anything without a reason." "What did he want?" "Maybe he wanted to warn me about you." The words came out before she could stop them, reckless and true. Fabio's expression went cold. "Is that what you think?" That I'm the enemy? I don't know what to think anymore." Her voice broke, frustration and fear spilling over. "You won't tell me anything. You use me like a prop in your twisted games. You act like I should just smile and trust you while you tear my life apart. I'm trying to protect you. By making me a target? By letting everyone in that room think I'm a thief?" Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Do you have any idea what it feels like to be completely powerless? To know that the person who promised to keep you safe is the one putting you in danger?" His hands moved to her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. For just a second, she saw something there: conflict, maybe even regret, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You're right," he said quietly. "You are powerless, because this world doesn't give you any other option. You can hate me for it. You can fight me. But at the end of the night, you're still going home with me. You're still carrying my child. And you're still going to do exactly what I tell you to survive." The cruel truth of it settled over her like a shroud. He released her and stepped back, adjusting his cufflinks like they'd just had a pleasant conversation about the weather. "We're leaving in 20 minutes. Be ready." He walked back inside, leaving her alone in the cold. Blythe wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the baby move inside her. She thought about Matteo's words, about Delacroix's warning, about the photograph that proved Fabio had been planning this betrayal for days. And she realized something that terrified her more than anything else. If she stayed with Fabio, she'd never be more than a piece on his board, never be more than leverage to be used and discarded when convenient. But if she tried to leave, she'd be running from the most dangerous man on the East Coast, a man who didn't lose, ever. Either way, she was trapped, unless she found a way to change the game entirely. The car ride home was silent. Fabio sat beside her in the back of the town car, scrolling through his phone, handling business like the night hadn't just imploded. Like his wife wasn't sitting inches away, plotting her survival. Because that's what this had become. Survival. Their building rose into the Manhattan skyline, all glass and steel and obscene wealth. The penthouse took up the entire top floor. Fabio's fortress, his kingdom, her prison. The elevator ride felt eternal. When they finally reached the apartment, Fabio headed straight for his office without a word. The door closed with a decisive click. Blythe stood in the foyer, still wearing the emerald gown, and felt something inside her snap. She kicked off her heels and went to the bedroom, yanking open her closet with shaking hands. She needed to think, needed to plan, needed to... Her phone buzzed. She'd gotten it back from security before they left. Unknown number. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Every instinct screamed danger, but curiosity or maybe desperation won out. She opened the message. "Check the nursery. Third drawer, under the blankets. You deserve to know the truth. M. Matteo." Blythe's pulse kicked into overdrive. The nursery was 2 doors down, freshly painted in soft yellows and whites. Fabio had insisted on decorating it himself, spending hours selecting furniture, choosing colors. She'd thought it was sweet, evidence that somewhere beneath the violence and control, he actually cared. Now everything felt like a lie. She walked to the nursery, flipping on the light. The room glowed warm and peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos tearing through her chest. The crib sat in the corner, mobile, hanging overhead with delicate stars and moons. She crossed to the dresser and opened the third drawer. Baby blankets, soft and new, still smelling faintly of the store. She pushed them aside. A manila envelope lay underneath. Her hands trembled as she pulled it out. No label, no markings, just thick, expensive paper that felt ominous in her grip. She opened it. Photographs spilled onto the changing table. Her stomach dropped. The first showed Fabio and Serafina, sitting close in what looked like a restaurant, his hand on her wrist, her head thrown back in laughter. Intimate, familiar. The second was worse. Same location, different angle. Serafina's hand on Fabio's chest, his fingers tangled in her hair. The third made her want to vomit. A kiss, not hesitant or accidental. Deep, passionate. The timestamp read 5 weeks ago. 5 weeks. She'd been 4 months pregnant, dealing with morning sickness and exhaustion, and the terrifying joy of feeling the baby kick for the first time. And he'd been with Serafina. But that wasn't even the worst part. She shuffled through more photos, Fabio and Serafina meeting with men she didn't recognize, documents being exchanged, money changing hands. And then, at the bottom of the stack, a contract. Her eyes scanned the legal jargon, trying to make sense of it. Words jumped out at her: merger, territory consolidation, mutual profit sharing, Orsini-Volkov alliance. Dated 6 months ago. 6 months. Right when Fabio had told her Serafina was his enemy, when he'd claimed she was undermining his operations. It was all a lie. They weren't enemies. They were partners. The room tilted. Blythe gripped the edge of the dresser, forcing herself to breathe through the panic. If Fabio and Serafina were working together, then tonight wasn't about protecting her. It wasn't about outmaneuvering an enemy. It was about something else entirely. The door to the nursery opened. Fabio stood there, still in his tuxedo, his expression unreadable. His eyes dropped to the photographs scattered across the changing table. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "You weren't supposed to find those," he said quietly. Blythe's laugh was broken, hysterical. "Clearly. What else wasn't I supposed to find out, Fabio? That you've been sleeping with the woman you claim is your enemy? That you've been lying to me for 6 months? That tonight was never about protecting me, it was about what? Consolidating power? Making some sick alliance?" He didn't deny it. That was somehow worse than if he'd tried to lie. "It's more complicated than you understand," he said. "Then explain it to me." She grabbed the contract, shaking it at him. "Explain why there's a merger agreement between you and Serafina dated the same week you proposed to me. Explain why you're kissing her while I'm home carrying your child. Explain any of this." His jaw clenched. "The alliance with Serafina was necessary. She controls territories I need. I control resources she wants. Together, we're unstoppable. And me? Where do I fit in your master plan? You're my wife, the mother of my heir. That matters. But not enough to be faithful. Not enough to be honest." Tears streamed down her face now, hot and humiliating. "Was any of it real? Did you ever actually love me? Or was I just another piece of the puzzle?" Something flickered in his eyes, guilt, maybe, or the ghost of whatever he'd felt when he'd pursued her 8 months ago. "I married you because you were different," he said finally. "Because you weren't part of this world. Because when I was with you, I could pretend I was something other than what I am. And what are you, Fabio?" His smile was bitter. "A monster, just like you said." The admission hung between them, terrible and true. "The baby," she started, "is mine, and I will protect my child with everything I have." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "But you need to understand something, Blythe. In my world, love is a liability. Emotion is weakness. I gave you as much as I'm capable of giving. If that's not enough, then you were never built for this life." The cruelty of it stole her breath. "So what happens now?" she whispered. "Now, you make a choice. You stay, raise our child in safety and wealth, and accept that this is who I am. Or—" He didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. Blythe looked down at the photographs, at the evidence of his betrayal, and felt the last piece of her illusion shatter. She'd thought she was marrying a dangerous man who loved her. She'd actually married a monster who loved nothing at all. And now she was trapped with him, bound by the life growing inside her, and the brutal reality that leaving might mean never escaping alive. "I need time," she said, her voice hollow. Fabio studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You have until morning. After that we move forward. Together." He left the nursery, closing the door softly behind him. Blythe sank to the floor, surrounded by photographs and lies, one hand on her belly and the other clutching her phone. Matteo's message was still on the screen. She typed a response with shaking fingers. "I need help." The reply came seconds later. "I know. Meet me tomorrow. Alone. I'll send you the address." She deleted the conversation and sat in the dark nursery, feeling her baby move inside her, and realized she'd just made the most dangerous decision of her life. She was going to fight back, even if it destroyed them both. Morning came with cold winter light filtering through the penthouse windows. Blythe hadn't slept. She'd spent the night staring at the ceiling, feeling the baby move, calculating her options. Each one ended in violence or loss. Fabio was already gone when she emerged from the bedroom. A note sat on the kitchen counter in his sharp handwriting. Business meeting. Back tonight. We'll talk then. No apology, no explanation, just expectations. Her phone buzzed. Matteo's address. A coffee shop in Brooklyn, far from Fabio's usual territory. Neutral ground. 11 a.m. Come alone. Tell no one. Blythe showered and dressed carefully, choosing jeans and a sweater that hid her belly. She needed to be invisible today, unremarkable. The building had security everywhere, Fabio's people, watching her constantly. Getting out without being followed would be nearly impossible, unless she created a distraction. She called the front desk. Hi, it's Mrs. Orsini. I'm expecting a delivery this morning, baby furniture. Can you have them bring it straight to the service elevator when it arrives? The lie came easily now. Survival made liars of everyone. 20 minutes later, chaos erupted in the lobby. A delivery truck had shown up with an enormous crib that wouldn't fit through the main entrance. Security rushed to handle it, barking orders, completely focused on the commotion. Blythe slipped out through the parking garage, caught a cab 3 blocks away, and didn't breathe until Manhattan was behind her. The coffee shop was small and worn, the kind of place that existed in the cracks between gentrification. Matteo sat in the back corner, baseball cap pulled low, looking nothing like the polished associate she'd met at the party. She slid into the booth across from him. Why are you helping me? Because Fabio's plan is going to get you killed. He pushed a folder across the table. And because I owe someone a debt. Who? Your mother. The world stopped. What? Matteo's expression softened. Gianna Castellano. That was her name before she went into witness protection and became Mary Remington, right? Blythe's blood turned to ice. Her mother had died when she was 12, a car accident, she'd been told. Quick, painless, final. My mother wasn't, she was Castellano family, East Coast syndicate, same world as Fabio's people. She testified against her own father 25 years ago to save you and herself. He opened the folder, revealing documents, photographs of a woman who looked eerily like Blythe. She made a deal with the FBI, new identities, new life. She kept you safe from this world until the day she died. The accident wasn't an accident. Someone found her, made it look like she lost control of the car. His voice was gentle but firm. I was junior FBI liaison back then. I couldn't save her. But I promised I'd look out for you if you ever crossed paths with this life again. Tears blurred her vision. You've been watching me? Since Fabio started pursuing you, I tried to warn you off indirectly, hoped you'd figure it out and run, but you fell in love, and then you got pregnant. And now, he gestured to her belly, now you're exactly where your mother fought to keep you from being. The revelation cracked something open inside her, all those years thinking she was nobody, that she'd stumbled into Fabio's world by accident. But she'd always belonged to it. The violence was in her blood. What's Fabio's plan? She asked, forcing herself to focus. Matteo pulled out more documents. The alliance with Serafina isn't about territory, it's about legitimacy. They're planning to merge their operations and go public fake corporations, money laundering on a massive scale. But the FBI has been building a case for 2 years. They're close to indictments. So why frame me for theft? Insurance. If the FBI moves against them, you take the fall. Pregnant wife, desperate for money, stealing from associates. It creates reasonable doubt, distracts from the real crimes. And if it all goes sideways, you're the scapegoat. His eyes were dark with anger. He's been building the narrative for months. The prenup you signed? It includes clauses that make you financially liable for any household debts incurred during the marriage. One signature, and you're legally responsible for millions in laundered money. The coffee in her stomach turned acidic. I didn't know what I was signing. He counted on that, just like he counted on you falling in love, being pregnant, being too afraid to leave. Matteo leaned forward. Blythe, listen to me. In 48 hours, the FBI is executing warrants. Fabio knows it's coming. That's why tonight happened. He's accelerating his timeline. By New Year's Eve, he'll have everything in place to pin his crimes on you and disappear with Serafina. The baby. He doesn't care about the baby. He cares about control. If the child is useful, he'll take it. If not, he didn't finish. Her hands shook so badly she had to press them flat on the table. What do I do? You run. Tonight. I have contacts who can get you into protective custody. Testify against Fabio, and the FBI will give you a new identity. You and the baby disappear, just like your mother tried to do. And if I don't, then you go to prison for his crimes, or you don't make it to trial at all." His voice dropped. "Serafina doesn't share. If you're still around when she and Fabio finalize their partnership, you're a liability they'll eliminate." The weight of it crushed down on her. Every option was impossible. Every path led to loss. "I need time to think." Her phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, all from Fabio. "Where are you? Security says you left. Call me. Now. Blythe, if you don't answer in 5 minutes, I'm sending people to find you." Matteo swore under his breath. "He knows. You have to decide right now. Come with me, or go back to him. But if you go back, there's no second chance." Blythe stared at her phone, at Fabio's messages growing more threatening by the second. She thought about the nursery they'd decorated together, the promises he'd made, the way he'd touched her belly like it mattered. All lies, all manipulation. But if she ran, she'd be alone, hunted. Her child would never know stability, never have a home. If she stayed, she'd have everything except freedom, everything except truth. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't testify against him. I can't put my baby through that life, running, hiding, always looking over our shoulder." "Then what will you do?" She met Matteo's eyes, and something cold and determined crystallized in her chest. "I'm going to beat him at his own game. Blythe, give me the evidence, everything you have on Fabio and Serafina. I'm not running, I'm not testifying, I'm going to take back control." Matteo studied her for a long moment, seeing something in her expression that made him nod slowly. "Your mother's daughter, after all." He handed her a flash drive. "Everything's on here. Bank accounts, transaction records, communications between Fabio and Serafina. Enough to bury them both." "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. What you're planning is more dangerous than running." She stood, tucking the flash drive into her pocket. "My mother spent her life running, and she still died. At least this way, I choose how the story ends." She left the coffee shop and called Fabio back. He answered on the first ring. "Where the hell are you?" "I went for a walk. I needed air. I'm sorry I should have told you." Silence. Then, "Come home, now." "I'm on my way." She hung up and hailed a cab, her heart hammering but her mind clear. Fabio thought she was weak, thought pregnancy made her helpless, thought love had made her blind. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Because Blythe Remington wasn't just some art history student who'd stumbled into the Mafia world. She was Gianna Castellano's daughter. And she was done being a victim. Fabio was waiting in the penthouse when she returned. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, hands in his pockets, every line of his body radiating controlled fury. "Where were you?" His voice was quiet, deadly. "I told you. I went for a walk. For 3 hours. In Brooklyn." He turned to face her. "Do you think I'm stupid, Blythe? Do you think I don't have people watching you every second?" So he'd known all along. Let her go. See where she'd lead him. She'd expected this, planned for it. "I went to see a doctor," she said, pulling out a receipt she'd grabbed from a clinic on the way back. "I've been having pains. I wanted to make sure the baby was okay before I worried you." His eyes narrowed, examining the paper. It was real. She'd stopped at a walk-in clinic, complained of cramps, gotten checked out, the perfect alibi. "And?" His voice softened fractionally. "Everything's fine. Just stress." She met his gaze steadily. Wonder what could be causing that. For a moment, something like guilt flickered across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold calculation she'd come to recognize. "We need to talk about last night," he said. "You mean about Serafina? About the photographs? About the fact that you've been lying to me for 6 months?" "I meant about your reaction to information you weren't ready to process." He moved closer, his presence overwhelming as always. "You're upset. I understand. But you need to see the bigger picture. Enlighten me." He exhaled slowly, like he was dealing with a stubborn child. "Everything I've built, everything we have, it's because I make the hard choices. The alliance with Serafina, the consolidation plan, even tonight's setup. It's all pieces of a strategy to ensure our family's future. By making me a criminal? By protecting you from being collateral damage when the authorities come calling. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. In 48 hours, multiple agencies are executing warrants across the eastern seaboard. Everyone in our world is going to be scrambling. I've positioned us to survive it. But I need you to trust me. The irony of those words almost made her laugh. Trust. From the man who'd betrayed her in every possible way. But she kept her expression neutral, uncertain, the way he expected her to look. How do I know you won't sacrifice me to save yourself? Because you're carrying my child, my heir, that makes you untouchable. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I won't let anything happen to you, Blythe. Not now. Not ever. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. She wondered how many women before her had believed the same words. Okay, she said softly. What do you need me to do? Relief flickered in his eyes. He'd expected more fight. There's an event tomorrow night. New Year's Eve. Serafina and I are finalizing the merger. I need you there, showing unity. After that, we disappear for a while. Let things cool down. When we come back, it'll be to a completely different landscape. And the baby? Will be born in a private facility overseas. Swiss citizenship, trust funds already established. Completely insulated from anything that happens here. It was a beautiful lie. A perfect trap. If she went with him tomorrow night, she'd never come back. The baby would be taken the moment it was born. And she'd either end up dead or locked away somewhere. A loose end finally tied off. I need a shower, she said, pulling away from his touch. It's been a long day. He let her go, satisfied that he'd won, that she'd fallen back in line. I have meetings this afternoon. I'll be back for dinner. We'll celebrate just the two of us. She nodded and walked to the bedroom, feeling his eyes on her the entire way. The moment the door closed, she pulled out her phone and the flash drive Matteo had given her. She had less than 24 hours to download everything, find leverage, and figure out how to turn Fabio's plan against him. Her hands moved quickly, plugging the drive into her laptop. Files flooded the screen, financial records, communications, surveillance footage. And there, buried in the data, she found it. A video file dated 2 weeks ago. Security footage from what looked like a warehouse. She clicked play. The image showed Fabio and Serafina. But they weren't alone. A third person stood with them, Julian Delacroix, the lawyer from the party. But he wasn't acting like their attorney. He was acting like their partner. The audio was faint, but she cranked the volume and listened. FBI knows about the offshore accounts, Delacroix was saying. We need to move the timeline up. And the wife? Serafina's voice, sharp and cold. She's the perfect patsy. Pregnant, emotional, easy to manipulate. We frame her for the theft, establish a pattern of instability. When the money goes missing and she disappears, everyone assumes she ran with it. Fabio's response made her blood run cold. And if she fights it, then we eliminate the problem. Women die in childbirth all the time. Tragic, but convenient. Serafina laughed. You really are ruthless. I almost feel sorry for her. Don't. She knew what she was marrying into. The video ended. Blythe sat frozen, the laptop screen glowing in the dimly lit bedroom. They'd planned it all, not just framing her killing her, making it look like an accident during delivery. Her baby was just leverage to keep her compliant until they didn't need her anymore. Rage crystallized into something sharp and focused. She wasn't afraid anymore. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. She copied the entire flash drive to her laptop, then to her phone, then to a cloud drive with passwords Fabio could never access. 3 backups, 3 insurance policies. Then she opened a new browser and started researching. FBI field offices, witness protection protocols, legal procedures for turning state's evidence. But she wasn't planning to run. She was planning something far more dangerous. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The party tomorrow. Wear a wire. We'll have agents positioned. Get them on tape discussing the plan, and we can arrest them all before they leave the country. M. Matteo. Still trying to protect her the way he'd failed to protect her mother. She typed back. I'll do it, but on one condition. When this is over, my baby and I disappear for real. New identities. Somewhere Fabio can never find us. The response came quickly. Deal. I'll have everything ready. Don't back out, Blythe. This is your only chance. She deleted the conversation and stood, walking to the nursery. The room where she'd discovered Fabio's betrayal. The room where their child was supposed to sleep. She touched her belly, feeling movement inside. I'm going to keep you safe, she whispered, no matter what it costs. Tomorrow night, at the New Year's Eve party, she'd walk into the lion's den wearing a wire. She'd get Fabio and Serafina on tape confessing to everything. And then she'd watch as federal agents tore apart the empire he'd built on lies and blood. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it was the only way to be truly free. The only way to give her baby a chance at a life that wasn't built on violence and fear. Fabio thought he'd broken her. Thought she was just another pawn to be moved and sacrificed. Tomorrow night, he'd learn the truth. She was her mother's daughter, and she was about to burn his entire world down. New Year's Eve arrived with deceptive calm. The sky over Manhattan was crisp and clear, the city preparing for celebration while Blythe prepared for war. Fabio had left early for final preparations. He'd kissed her forehead before leaving, a gesture that once would have comforted her. Now it felt like a predator marking its prey. Tonight changes everything, he'd said. After this, we're untouchable. She'd smiled and nodded, playing the compliant wife one last time. The moment he left, she met Matteo in a parking garage 6 blocks away. He handed her a device smaller than a button, designed to look like jewelry. Pin it inside your dress, near your chest. It'll pick up everything within 20 feet. His expression was grim. The moment you get them on tape discussing the frame job, the murders, the money laundering, we move in. Agents will be positioned throughout the venue. What if Fabio searches me? He won't. He thinks you're broken. That's your advantage. Matteo gripped her shoulder. Your mother would be proud of what you're doing. Blythe blinked back tears. I hope so. She returned to the penthouse and dressed carefully. A midnight blue gown that accommodated her belly, hair swept up, makeup perfect. She looked like Mrs. Fabio Orsini, wealthy, polished, controlled. But inside, she was her mother's daughter, a survivor, a fighter. She pinned the wire inside her dress, the weight of it both terrifying and empowering. Fabio arrived at 7, looking devastating in a black suit. His eyes swept over her with approval. Beautiful. Ready? Ready. The venue was a private estate in the Hamptons, the kind of place that didn't appear on any map. Ice sculptures lined the driveway, champagne flowed like water, and everyone who mattered in the criminal underworld had gathered to ring in the new year, and to witness the Orsini-Volkov merger that would reshape the eastern seaboard. Serafina held court near the bar, red dress blazing, power radiating from every pore. She caught Blythe's eye and smiled, predatory and triumphant. Fabio's hand pressed against Blythe's back. Stay close. This won't take long. He guided her through the crowd toward a private room at the back of the estate. Serafina and Delacroix were already inside, along with 3 men Blythe didn't recognize. Accountants, probably, or lawyers. The door closed behind them with a decisive click. Gentlemen, my wife Blythe. Fabio's introduction was casual, dismissive, like she was a prop. She won't be staying long. Actually, Blythe said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I'd like to stay. I want to understand the business that's consuming my husband's life. Fabio's eyes narrowed. That's not necessary. I insist. She met his gaze without flinching. After all, if something happens to you, I'll need to know how things work, for our child's sake. Serafina laughed, a sharp sound like breaking glass. She has a point, Fabio. Wives should understand their husbands' affairs. All of them. The dig was deliberate, cruel. Blythe ignored it, and sat, positioning herself where the wire would catch every word. Fabio exchanged a look with Serafina, some silent communication passing between them. Then he shrugged. Fine. Stay, but keep quiet. The meeting began. They discussed territory divisions, profit sharing, the logistics of consolidating their operations. Blythe listened, memorizing every detail, waiting for the confession she needed. 20 minutes in, Delacroix pulled out a folder. The FBI warrants execute at midnight tomorrow. We need to finalize the transfer protocols now. And the wife? One of the accountants gestured toward Blythe. She's still a liability. Handled, Fabio said coldly. After tonight, she'll be properly motivated to stay silent. Serafina leaned forward. Motivated how? The frame job from the Christmas party wasn't enough? That was phase 1, establishing instability. Fabio's voice was clinical, detached. Tomorrow she'll sign updated financial documents making her legally responsible for the offshore accounts. If the FBI investigates, all trails lead to her. And if she refuses? Delacroix asked. She won't. She's 5 months pregnant and terrified of losing the baby. I've made sure she understands that cooperation keeps her child safe. Fabio glanced at Blythe. Isn't that right, Kara? Every eye turned toward her. The moment hung suspended, fragile as spun glass. This was it, the confession, everything on tape. She could end it now. Signal Matteo. Watch federal agents swarm the room. But something stopped her. Some instinct inherited from her mother, the woman who'd survived this world long enough to save her daughter. Actually, Blythe said slowly, standing up, I have a better idea. Fabio went very still. Excuse me? She reached into her purse and pulled out a tablet, setting it on the table. With a few taps, the screen came alive, displaying the video she'd found on Matteo's flash drive. Fabio, Serafina, and Delacroix in the warehouse, discussing her murder. The room erupted. Where did you get that? Serafina's voice was ice and venom. Does it matter? Blythe kept her tone calm, authoritative. What matters is that I have copies, multiple copies, stored in locations you'll never find, along with complete financial records of your offshore accounts, communication logs, and documented evidence of every crime you've committed in the past 2 years. Fabio stood slowly, danger radiating from him. Blythe, what are you doing? Taking control of my life. Something I should have done months ago. She met his eyes without fear. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to dissolve this merger. You're going to transfer $50 million into an account I control, untraceable, unreachable. And you're going to grant me a divorce with full custody of our child. Or what? Serafina's hand moved toward her purse where Blythe knew she kept a gun. Or at midnight, every piece of evidence I have gets sent simultaneously to the FBI, the IRS, Interpol, and your competitors. You'll all be in federal custody before dawn. And every enemy you've ever made will know exactly where to find you. She paused. Your choice. The silence was deafening. Delacroix broke first. She's bluffing. She doesn't have the technical knowledge. Try me. Blythe held up her phone. 1 button. That's all it takes. And given that I'm wearing a wire right now, and federal agents are positioned throughout this venue, you might want to choose your next move very carefully. Fabio's expression shifted through a dozen emotions: shock, rage, calculation, and something that might have been respect. You've been planning this, he said quietly. Since the moment I found those photographs, you taught me well, Fabio. Every move is strategy. Every relationship is leverage. I'm just playing the game you forced me into. Serafina moved fast, gun clearing her purse. But before she could aim, the door burst open. Federal agents flooded the room, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands. Matteo was with them, badge displayed, his expression grim and satisfied. FBI! Nobody move! Chaos erupted. Delacroix tried to run and was tackled. The accountants surrendered immediately. Serafina fought until 2 agents restrained her, screaming threats in Russian and English. But Fabio just stood there, staring at Blythe, his hands raised slowly. You called them, he said. Not a question. A realization. I gave them everything. Complete testimony, documented evidence, recordings of tonight's meeting. It's over, Fabio. Agents moved to handcuff him. He didn't resist, but his eyes never left hers. The baby, he said quietly. Our child. We'll never know you. We'll never be touched by this world. I'm making sure of that. Her voice cracked despite her determination. You could have chosen us. Could have been the man I thought you were. But you chose power instead. I chose survival. No. You chose control. There's a difference. An agent pulled him toward the door, reading him his rights. But Fabio looked back one last time. You're stronger than I gave you credit for, he said. Your mother would be proud. The words hit like a physical blow. He'd known about her mother, her history, the bloodline that connected her to his world. He'd chosen her specifically because of it. Then he was gone, swallowed by agents and accusations and the collapse of the empire he'd built. Matteo approached carefully. "You okay?" Blythe pressed a hand to her belly, feeling her baby move strong, insistent, alive. "I will be. We'll need your full statement. Depositions. You'll have to testify at trial." "I know. I'm ready." He nodded, respect clear in his expression. "Witness protection is already arranged. New identities for you and the baby. You'll disappear completely." She looked around the room at the chaos, the agents, the wreckage of the life she'd almost been trapped in forever. "Good. I'm ready to disappear." As they led her out into the cold December night, past ice sculptures melting under heat lamps and champagne glasses abandoned in the panic, Blythe felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Her baby would be born free, would grow up far from violence and manipulation and the brutal chess games that destroyed everyone they touched. She'd won. Not by running, not by surrendering, but by fighting back with the same ruthless intelligence that had almost destroyed her. The fireworks started early, somewhere in the distance, celebrating a new year she would face on her own terms. And for the first time since she'd met Fabio Orsini, Blythe Remington smiled. 6 months later, Blythe stood on the porch of a small house overlooking the Pacific Ocean, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. The air smelled like salt and freedom. Her daughter slept peacefully in the bassinet beside her, tiny fists curled against her chest, dark hair soft as silk. Sophia, not an Orsini, not a Castellano. Just Sophia Chen, the name on the birth certificate that represented a completely new beginning. The Witness Protection Program had relocated them to a coastal town in Oregon, population barely 3,000. No one here knew about Manhattan penthouses or mafia empires, or the woman who'd brought down one of the most powerful crime families on the East Coast. Here, she was Emma Chen, a widow raising her daughter alone, an artist who sold watercolors at the local market, a quiet woman with sad eyes who kept to herself but always smiled at neighbors. It was simple, anonymous, safe. Everything her mother had tried to give her. Blythe Emma now lifted Sophia carefully, cradling her against her chest. The baby stirred, making soft sounds, and something fierce and protective surged through her. "You'll never know that world," she whispered. "You'll never be used as leverage or treated like a pawn. You'll be free to choose your own path." Her phone buzzed. The secure line Matteo had given her for emergencies only. She answered cautiously. "Hello? It's me. Just wanted to update you." Matteo's voice was warm, reassuring. "The trials concluded yesterday. Fabio got 25 years, federal maximum security. Serafina got 30. Delacroix flipped on everyone and got 15. The entire organization is dismantled." Relief flooded through her. "It's really over?" "It's really over. The judge sealed all records mentioning you. As far as the world knows, you disappeared. Fabio's asked about you and the baby, but he's been told you're untraceable. He can't reach you. Ever." Blythe looked down at Sophia, sleeping peacefully, untouched by the violence that had almost consumed them both. "Good. How are you doing, really?" She considered the question. 6 months ago, she'd been terrified, pregnant, trapped in a marriage built on lies. She'd felt powerless, manipulated, alone. Now she stood in a home she'd made safe through her own courage. She'd survived testifying at trial, facing Fabio one last time across a courtroom. She'd endured his cold stare, Serafina's threats, the defense attorneys trying to paint her as an accomplice. But she'd told the truth, all of it, and the jury had believed her. "I'm healing," she said finally. "It's slow. Some days are harder than others, but I look at Sophia and I remember why I fought so hard. Your mother would be incredibly proud. You broke the cycle she couldn't break. Your daughter gets the life Gianna wanted for you." Tears pricked her eyes. "I wish I could have known her, the real her. She was brave, fierce, terrified but determined. Just like you." Matteo paused. "I kept a box of her things, letters, photographs, journals. When you're ready, I can send them, so you can know who she really was." "I'd like that. Thank you, Matteo. For everything, for protecting us, for giving us this chance." You protected yourself, Blythe. I just helped clear the path. The courage was all yours." They said goodbye, and she stood there holding her daughter, watching the ocean roll endlessly toward shore. She thought about Fabio sometimes, wondered if he ever regretted his choices, if he lay awake in his cell thinking about the family he'd destroyed for power that meant nothing now. Probably not. Men like Fabio didn't do regret. They did strategy and survival and cold calculation until the very end. But she'd learned something crucial from her time in his world. Strength wasn't about control or manipulation or building empires on fear. Real strength was protecting what mattered, choosing love over power, having the courage to walk away from everything you knew to give your child something better. Her mother had tried to teach her that, had died protecting that truth. Now Blythe Emma would spend the rest of her life honoring that sacrifice. The sun climbed higher, warming her face. Sophia woke, blinking at the bright world with curious eyes that held no shadows, no fear, just the innocent wonder of a baby discovering morning. "Good morning, sweetheart," Blythe whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Let me tell you about your grandmother, about how brave she was, about how she fought to keep us safe." She carried Sophia inside, to the sunny kitchen where coffee was brewing, and breakfast waited, to the life she'd built from nothing but determination and the fierce love of a mother protecting her child. Outside, waves crashed against the shore in an endless rhythm. Inside, Blythe Remington, who'd been Gianna Castellano's daughter and Fabio Orsini's wife, became simply Emma Chen, a woman starting over. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt genuinely, completely free. The story that had started with betrayal and violence, and a Christmas party where everything shattered, had ended here, in this quiet house by the ocean, with a baby's laugh and sunrise and the promise of days uncounted stretching ahead. She'd survived. She'd won, not by becoming like the monsters who'd tried to trap her, but by refusing to let them break her. That was the legacy she'd give Sophia. Not money or power or connections, just the truth that you could face impossible darkness and still choose to be kind. You could be betrayed by the person you loved most and still believe in love. You could be backed into a corner with no escape and still find the courage to fight back. Hey everyone, I hope this story reminded you that strength isn't about never being vulnerable, it's about what you do when everything falls apart. If this story moved you, drop a comment below about a time you had to find courage you didn't know you had. And please subscribe if you haven't already, because we've got so many more stories coming that will inspire, challenge, and remind you of your own strength. Blythe had learned that lesson the hardest way possible. And now, watching her daughter sleep peacefully in a world untouched by violence, she knew every terrifying moment had been worth it. Because some battles aren't about winning. They're about making sure the next generation never has to fight at all. Moral lesson. True strength isn't found in control or manipulation, but in the courage to protect what matters most, even when it costs you everything. Love should never demand you lose yourself, and the bravest thing you can do is walk away from toxicity to build a better future. Remember, you are never as powerless as someone wants you to believe, and choosing survival over comfort is the first step toward real freedom.